Welcome in. It's Thursday night. It's football, guys. It's halftime of Thursday Night Football. We have the New York Giants are winning over the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably maybe a little bit of a surprise here, 20-17. The Giants offense has looked very competent against what has traditionally been a strong Eagles defense. Jackson Dart has looked comfortable moving the ball, attacking the ball downfield, running with the ball, and then the Eagles offense is trying to answer back. We had a really just a run heavy game for the most part. But like I said, some of these teams are getting to attack vertically. We're seeing AJ Brown do some things. We're seeing Cam Scatabo get a touchdown. Dallas Goedert's been very busy, but that is neither here nor there. We have myself, Jeff Bell. We have Matt Waldman, and we have a good friend in here, Mike Kashuba. Mike Cash is joining us. And so how are you guys doing this evening? How do you, thoughts of this game or just kind of anything in general?
Good. Excited to talk a little ball, talk about how amazing Jackson Dart is. Will constantly beat myself up for swapping him with Shedeur Sanders in the rookie guide, but I think he's showing a lot of the tools that you want to see in the moxie and all the, gritty, put whatever stereotype you want to put on there, but he's playing very well and the team's rallying around him. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I mean, it's an exciting game. It's fun to see a team like the Giants, especially down a superstar receiver and having a rookie quarterback in there, scoring 20 points on the Eagles, and Dart being the one that's leading the show so far with it, and him and Cam Scatabo seem to be a fun pair. You kind of need, it's almost like a little bit of John C. Riley and Will Ferrell in the way that those two act together. Hopefully that doesn't carry over onto the field in a bad way, but so far it hasn't. So it's that's been great. How about you, Jeff?
Doing well. It's interesting that you mentioned Dart and Scatabo, and I think it's fascinating just in general because the way that this Giants, really just the organization last year, they needed some life breathed into them. They needed something, and like occasionally you'll see where I remember that the Seattle draft class where they got Russell Wilson, they got, I think, Cam Chancellor, they got maybe Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas were all in the same class. And it was like one class just completely reset that organization and was their backbone for a championship run. And I think that I'm not going to championship run on this Giants class, but I think when you look at adding Abdul Carter at the top of the draft, you look at what you're getting from Jackson Dart right now, you're getting from Cam Scatabo. It brought really an infusion of positive personality into the organization, talent into the organization that they desperately needed. And I think it's interesting that when teams do have those runs of you just nail it on every single pick and it changes how the franchise can go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one that's a little bit leery about to say they've nailed the Jackson Dart pick just yet. Just because we saw that with Baker Mayfield against the Jets in his first game, and everybody thought they nailed it, and then it took him a while and there were some ups and downs there, and some people say they should never have let him go, but we don't know. That same thing could be said that that the Rams completely flunked on Jared Goff, or that the Lions got an exciting guy in Matthew Stafford, but he was never really going to be anything other than a hero ball practitioner. So we need a good 18 to 30 games to really see what a quarterback has. And, the good signs this week that I saw was that Jackson Dart actually completed a pass over 30 yards to a receiver that was pinpoint. And from my charting, I didn't see that at Ole Miss very often or frequently enough to give him good marks on his downfield accuracy. And last week he only had one that was beyond 25 yards like that as well. So this game, what I fear is that Brian Dable is going to be able to craft a short and intermediate game to make it look good in the box score, but it may not be lasting. But if he can continue to throw the ball downfield reasonably well, and do it more often, and especially resetting off of pressure and being able to do it in the pocket, then I think that you have something there that could be really good. And I would echo Mike's, enthusiasm about him. And I think that what the Eagles are going to have to do is, which I'm surprised that they couldn't, is they did a good job of getting pressure high on the edges against him, but they need to have that middle shored up. That if they can keep that middle shored up and force, um, force Dart to actually take a step and climb and reset and fire instead of run, I think that's where they're going to have an advantage right now at this level of his play. We'll see, and if that happens and they come back because of that, then that'll be the challenge for Dart in the future. But right now, if he continues to be able to climb the pocket and run and get out of the way of defenders that they're coming in waves and scramble like he has, I mean, they have a good chance to win this game.
Yeah, I'm wondering how long are we going to let defensive coordinators? We talk about rookie quarterbacks starting and saying, they don't have enough tape on him. They don't know what his scouting report looks like. I mean, we've seen Jackson Dart for a couple of weeks. We knew the wheels that he had coming out of Ole Miss. Like, how did the Eagles not expect Dart to take off and run every once in a while? How are their linebackers not spying and making sure that he stays in the pocket, make sure that he works through his progressions? It seems like they're almost caught off guard by this, which should be weird for Eagles fans.
It's a great point, and it's a great question, Mike. I mean, it's the best answer that I can give, and I'm not going to say it's a good answer. It's just the best attempt I can give to it, is that teams typically, as I've been told from scouts, teams typically take 6 to 8 weeks to compile their scouting reports and submit them because they don't feel like they have enough data to implement on one. And while it's a common sense solution that you just supplied, if like any fan can watch a game and go, why aren't they spying them? I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, right? But I think that what happens is that these coordinators, there's part of it is the fallacy or the fallacies of how coaches do their jobs. There's so much complexity. It's such a big ship. They don't like making hairpin turns. And so when they see, after they get 6 to 8 weeks of scouting data, they don't even implement everything they see. They look at their scheme, they look at their personnel, they look at the player they're going to face, and they go, maybe we can tweak these 2 or 3 things and see what happens. Because if we completely wipe away our game plan, then and they completely blow it out of the water, we're screwed. And then I look like an idiot, and then I'm going to get fired in this environment. And I think that that's probably part of the fear. And so they try and incrementally do it, and then they build on each other's tape. But I do think if I'm being honest, and from what you're saying, I agree with you, they take entirely too long. And there's a bit of ego involved in it, which is like, especially on defense, because on offense, there's all these different things that are really complex. I mean, defense can be more in the disguises with the coverage and things like that can certainly be complex. But you would think that you can probably find some people to spy. But does that mean that you have to play a different coverage? And do you have guys that are maybe not that good at the coverage where that involves having spies? Mm-hmm. And then now you're starting to get into things where you've exposed more problems and you don't want to go too far into that direction. And I think that, there's probably some of those answers are justifiable that I'm attempting to make that people say, but some of it may also be, we make things entirely too complicated. We don't let these players play. We get in the way of that. And Ndamukong Suh, I heard the other day on a show, somebody was talking about how when Suh went to Miami, he got paid that $100 million, and it was such a huge contract that he apparently called a meeting for the entire team. He called it, and he literally dogged out the players who weren't playing well, and then dogged out the coaches who were not doing a good job of actually coaching, that they were getting in the way of letting players play. And that, literally the linebackers who were like not dogged out were talking about this in hindsight. And they were talking about what had happened. And they said, we went back to our meeting rooms right after that, and we thought it was the most epic, awesome thing ever. But our linebacker coach is literally like trying to say stuff to us like this never happened. And we're looking at him like, well, coach, he just dogged you out, called you out, and said this, like, are you going to, should we ask Ndamukong, since he's the one who's going to be here. He already told us he's going to be here longer than any of us who aren't playing well, including the coaches who aren't coaching well. Should we ask him what he thinks about this stuff? So I think there's a lot of backwardness with the league, and I think part of it is how responsive they are. That's potentially an issue, but at the same time, some of it can be rooted in truth that maybe what we think is simple, the consequences of that might be that you have a rookie safety who's not very good at disguising things or handling adjustments, or you may have linebackers who stink at doing that, or we know that they're not good in certain areas, and they know those weaknesses and go, we're not going to try that because it's too prohibitive right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth mentioning Jalen Carter is out of this game, and then Quinyon Mitchell got injured in the first half too. And so, you're down your best defensive player, probably your second best defensive player too. And we did see the Eagles after that Super Bowl, they lost Milton Williams, and we see so often after a Super Bowl win, kind of those depth guys end up getting signed to big contracts because they help you win the Super Bowl because they've got enough experience in the league to be those contributors. They hit free agency, they leave, and somebody gives them a bag of money. And the other missing Jalen Carter too, and the way that the Eagles are constructed with so much resources allocated to Jalen Hurts, to AJ Brown, to Saquon Barkley, to Devonta Smith, and just the way that you're built out to Lane Johnson, you need those blue chip players on defense to be able to erase for what you're missing. So they're missing Jalen Carter. We saw that week 1 when Jalen Carter was out and they could not get any pressure at all. And Dak Prescott sat back there all day long. And now you're missing your top corner as well, which is going to adjust all your coverage schemes too. So I think that that's part of it. And part of it too, getting tape on, having a game plan. But when you're down those guys, so much of what we see, I think so often in the NFL now is just defense trying to not give up the home run play and kind of just sitting back. When you don't have those difference makers that can erase some of those conservative-ish game plan approaches, then you kind of get stuck in the middle sometimes.
Yeah, well, how are you guys feeling about, just looking at the Eagles right now and from a fantasy perspective? AJ Brown, people were getting worried, but it looks like they're starting to get him more targets. Are you enthused by this, or are you just looking? It's the Giants' defense. I mean, how do you feel about this?
They had the big meeting, so that was the news of Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Saquon Barkley had the big meeting to get everybody rolling, and so far so good in terms of that. But Mike, why don't you go ahead and take it?
Yeah, I think it's one thing. It's the meeting. The other thing, the Giants, the front seven is just so aggressive that there are going to be opportunities in man coverage on the outside there, which is where AJ Brown and Devonta Smith both eat. I think this is also, we're beginning to see this cycle with the Eagles. If you rewind 1 year ago, the Eagles, they started slow for the first month of the season. You're saying, man, what's going on with the Eagles? And then they started clicking in week 6 and they started really putting it together. And before we knew it, they were beginning to take off and just absolutely steamroll teams. 2 years ago, it's more of the same. 3 years ago, it's more of the same. I'm thinking this may be like a culture thing around Philadelphia. Maybe they're just not prepared for the season at the start. And maybe this is just a predictable thing. Like maybe go prepare to buy low on Eagles after a slow start in 2026.
That'd be great, and certainly it seems like there's a pattern there with that. Let's hope so, because the criticisms people have are of Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator. And if let's hope it's not that. Let's hope that the scheme was not so bass-ackwards that they've taken all these all-pro skill players and managed to render them practically, something that you would say, wow, that's an accomplishment that they're this bad. And I think that, because they can't go back and add a lot of plays, they can pare things down, they can make little variations, but they've installed this offense, and we know how long it takes to do that. They're not going to they can't reinstall a new one. So the fact that this is encouraging that they can get Brown involved without having to go back to the drawing board.
I think it's interesting too that when you look at, the NFL had an off season of dissecting this Eagles offense, and they were the Super Bowl champs. So that was the number one offense that NFL defenses wanted to dissect of how do we stop this? How do we attack this? I think part of it too, when you look at last year, you talk about that lag of 6 to 8 games for a scouting report. The first 4 weeks last year, they were very pass heavy. And then basically, in my mind, at least, Nick Sirianni took Kellen Moore into his office and said, by the way, we have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley run the dang ball. And that's pretty much what they did and didn't lose again once they started doing that. And so if you're thinking of like the 6 to 8 games lagging, those first 4 games, you almost had to scrap them because they completely overhauled. And I think part of it, so many of these defenses now are sitting in this too high shell with out 3 linebackers. And so you had just these massive lanes forcing Saquon Barkley to run into that coverage. And then defenses didn't really have they had the trail to catch up to it, and they never really got caught up to it. And then they had a year of an off season of saying, what do we need to do to stop this? What do we need to do to slow this offense down? They've had some overturn in the offensive line. They lost, who's the guy that went to the big dude that went to the Jets, the road grader blocker.
The tackle that converted to guard.
Yeah. Yes.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
He's a first round pick, but
Mekhi Becton.
Becton. And Mekhi Becton was a road grader and a racer in the interior line last year. And so they lose him out of there. And so I think that all just comes into shifting personnel. But we do have a question here from Bob Hope has joined us. And he's wondering, he's got Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, and DeAndre Swift, PPR. Pick one. Also, Pitts or Taylor. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Bob. What are you guys going here on this question?
I will start every receiver against the Miami defense, and Keenan Allen has been on a tear. I think that's my favorite answer for that one. I don't know what you gentlemen think.
I'd go with that. I like that as well. I mean, Sutton certainly is a safe play because we know the type of targets that he'll get, but I think Keenan is the more dynamic option for red zone and probably a little bit of a higher ceiling in terms of volume. And then in terms of Pitts or Taylor, I mean, I like what they did with Pitts 2 weeks ago before the bye, and I hope they continue to do that. But I've seen what I've seen too for the past 2 weeks from Mason Taylor, and I'm going to take a chance on that because he's on par to be doing better than what Sam Laporte has been doing right now, which has been pretty okay. And I think that Justin Fields has targeted. He targeted Cole Kmet on 37% of his career attempts. Guys who are high on doing that as well are Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, who targeted their top tight ends 45 and 46% of the time, respectively. And he did it with Cole Kmet. I mean, Cole Kmet is like a half tier up from Brock Wright. Okay, if he made a half tier up from Brock Wright, basically a tight end 8 and tight end 9 for 2 years, and then got him a second contract for the amount of time that he checks down to a tight end, I'm rolling with Mason Taylor. And plus, he was my number 2 tight end coming out, so I already felt like strong about him.
Well, now I feel bad. I like Cole Kmet. I think he's a solid tight end, but
he is a solid tight end. He is.
Pitts and Mason Taylor feel like 2 guys that are on differing trajectories. Like we saw some good involvement from Pitts, but that's with Darnell Mooney out, facing some pretty good defense or some pretty bad defenses. A lot of opportunity there. Now a pretty tough matchup. Mooney might come back. We're looking at more mouths to feed in the offense. Mason Taylor's the 2. So yeah, I definitely agree. Mason Taylor.
That question's a good jumping off point of Matt does the great roundtable every single week, and both Mike and I got to participate in that. One of the questions that Matt had on that roundtable was, who is a player that you think is outperforming where he will settle in, like kind of who will fall down a tier or 2 in the coming weeks? And my answer was Keenan Allen. And so, basically what I said, first 3 weeks, we got touchdowns out of Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen was wide receiver 8 those first 3 weeks. The last 2 weeks, we haven't gotten touchdowns out of Keenan Allen. He's been wide receiver 40 those last 2 weeks, and he's really being valued as a top 20 receiver, as a wide receiver 2 across the industry right now. And volume was there still the past couple of weeks, but without getting that into the end zone, we're not seeing big explosives downfield really to Keenan Allen, and that's not really his role within that offense. And at some level, you've got this offense that's really struggling to get going, and now you're losing a Marion Hampton. He's been a key there. Your offensive line's banged up. At what point do you just really purposely make Ladd McConkey back to being Ladd McConkey? Because he's still the best. Outside Justin Herbert, he's the best offensive player that they have. And at some level, the Miami Dolphins seem like a perfect example of a team that you can get some of these guys going.
Yeah, I think they need to use, we've seen a lot of NFL offenses shift to using their either smaller receivers or receivers that are better after the catch as an extension of their run game. They haven't really used Ladd McConkey in that way in the first couple of weeks of the season. They've used him because he is so good at separating and requires so much attention from the defense. It stinks for us fantasy managers, but they've been using him to clear out and then get Quentin Johnson behind, get Keenan Allen behind, get them on softer matchups. If we can just, with Hampton out, the rest of the backfield looks a little rough. Both their tackles are currently out. The interior of their offensive line is, like, I'm seeing Chargers fans demand that they bench all 3 of them and just find guys off the streets. Like, there's a lot of turmoil in Los Angeles there. Let's get some quick passes to Ladd McConkey, let him extend afterwards. Use that as an extension of your run game. And the Miami Dolphins, that's a great call out. This is a team that cannot cover anybody. If there's a time to be quicker than the 6 to 8 week window, it's when you have a favorable matchup that you can start implementing some new things and see if they work.
Yeah, I mean, I it's an interesting call. I mean, and I mean, I'll add a couple. I didn't get to really add any to the subject, but I'll go with Daniel Jones. When you look at who he's played, I mean, come on now. We're talking about Miami. Denver wasn't bad, that's for sure. So there was, Tennessee, the Rams, and there are games where you're going to have to keep up with certain teams, and then you get garbage time looks. The Raiders in Arizona. I mean, I still think coming up, we're going to see, the Chargers, the Steelers, Atlanta's pretty good, the Chiefs, Houston's been pretty good at times, Seattle and San Francisco. And also because a lot of the plays that they use are schemed. They're like, let's move heaven and earth to get one guy open, and there's only so many of those that you have gone to the well with before these teams have seen enough of them to go, yeah, we know what's coming here. So I think Daniel Jones has played well within what he's doing, but when they make him go past one read and put pressure in the pocket and make him move to buy time in the pocket to do those things, I don't know how well that's going to turn out for him. I know everyone loves Ted McMillan, but he's a wide receiver too, and people are hoping it's only going to grow to be a wide receiver 1. But I haven't seen him beat man coverage yet. Not like straight up, I'm going to trying to hit you in the chest at the line of scrimmage and cover you on a timing route, man-to-man coverage. When they're playing outside, say, inside shade, 3 to 5 yards off, he's faced that, and he's had distinct advantages because he's playing inside when that happens, or it's outside shade and he's working an inside route, and there's that's fine. He's made great catches. But again, Jacksonville, Arizona, Atlanta, New England, Miami, Dallas, I'm not overly impressed with those defenses. And then you get the Jets and the Bills and the Packers and the Saints and Atlanta again. Maybe they'll, at home, San Francisco, the Rams. I would feel like we're going to get tested a little bit more. Jalen Coker, we know, can win against man coverage, and he knows that he can work in the middle of the field. So I think Tet's going to get tested a little bit more, and I think he's a good receiver, but I think I'm more along the likes of he's a number 2 receiver who can give you borderline number 1 numbers with with like a Batman next to him. Like he's going to be, you know, I think he's going to be more of a T. Higgins type than he's going to be, you know, a Justin Jefferson type. You know, but you know, still a good fantasy starter and a guy you want in your dynasty leagues, for sure. But I'm thinking that he's going to plateau, and I wouldn't be surprised if we even see a little bit of a dip.
I think
it's interesting to go from 1 second and then I'll go to you. But that's interesting to go from, because like thinking about the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. is kind of a guy that Ted McMillan reminds me of a little bit. And we assigned Michael Pittman Jr. being the number one receiver there. And then everybody kind of assumes, that we think we've got everything solved. And then Tyler Warren shows up and it's like this dude from another planet. And it's like, okay, well, this is the actual number one target now in the offense, like immediately. And so I think that's an interesting call out there. Mike, where did you want to go?
I was going to say this makes me feel bad because we also talked about players that could get hot, and Tetairoa McMillan was my pick there.
Well, don't listen to me. I mean, come on now. I mean, you're going to be, you may be right more often than I am about this stuff, So, I mean, that's the fun part of this. So why, I mean, tell people why you feel good about McMillan. Cause it may be more true than what I'm thinking. We'll see.
No, I think what you're saying is 100% true. And there's a lot of ways that he can grow inside of his game. He definitely needs to do a little bit better of beating press, separating. But even when he is covered, Bryce Young is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And there's not, with Coker returning, I'm curious to see when both are covered. Is Bryce going to throw it up to Coker? Is he going to throw it up to Tetairoa McMillan? Like, how is that going to shake out? And look, this week he gets the Dallas Cowboys. He's due for a touchdown. He has an unholy amount of targets for having 0 touchdowns. And if this is a 21, 22-year-old player that can continue to grow and is getting so much volume that he's getting each of these chances to learn, develop, we can see that growth. I think where he is right now, I agree, he could be stuck at a T. Higgins of Michael Pittman. But if he does eventually attack the ball, you did a great breakdown where he's trying to come up underhand. George Pickens falls from the same thing. If he begins fighting through contact, coming up over top of guys, and then attacking after the catch with aggression, like we saw him do at Arizona at times, there's so much room for this guy to improve. And I'm just not impressed by what the rest of the Carolina Panthers are doing. And they're going to be playing from behind a lot because that defense is awful. So I think the volume will remain consistent. And if we can just sprinkle in a touchdown or two every couple of weeks, he's going from wide receiver 2 to high-end wide receiver 2, borderline low-end wide receiver 1 with just a little variance.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, listen, Michael Pittman's wide receiver 13 right now. So it's not exactly like, even with Tyler Warren going on, Pittman's still a borderline wide receiver 1, and thus ends the unintentional hazing of the new guy on this show, I
was like, man, you guys invited me to come on. I'm so excited. By the way, your picks this week, terrible.
Not at all. Not
it's
at all.
Great. It's great.
Not at all. That's not
the intent. I think we're at a really interesting point in the season, though, because I think that we are kind of in the, we've had enough sample size. We've had 5 games now where, like, a guy like Jameson Williams, where, like, it hasn't really been come together yet. You're kind of like, well, this isn't like a bad game or two now. Like, this is 5 games now. Or a guy like, I think it's interesting, Calvin Ridley had a huge game last week, because I know we talked on last week's episode about concerns with the Titans offense, and he has that big game, and then you look and you say, okay, well, week 1, he went up against Patrick Surtain. Week 4, he went up against Derek Stingley. So, I mean, he's kind of run into some pretty difficult matchups, then was able to take advantage of the Cardinals. It's kind of that in-between point of, like, and like I mentioned with Keenan Allen, of starting out touchdowns in the first 3 weeks, where some of these things that maybe are unsustainable, that players got boosted because of that, are going to start to come back to the mean a little bit. Guys that had difficult matchups, or the offenses were trying to figure some things out, they're going to click. We see it every single year. We see it at the halfway point. It seems like there's guys that fall off the halfway point, and then there's guys that have great seasons after the halfway point that didn't do anything before.
Yeah. And, one of the things that can happen too is that, like, back to Tet, a good fallacy of what may happen in terms of my criticisms with him is that when you get focused on certain things that players don't do well, you can sometimes overlook all the things that they do well enough. So one of the things that can happen is that when you're, for me, the difference, again, the difference between a future top 5 wide receiver and what I think he is still going to make him a top 30 draft pick or top 50 draft pick for the next 5 to 6 years. So it's not like I'm saying the guy's trash. It's just more when people say I think he's going to be like a top 5 wide receiver for years to come. But at the same time, if he has 3 to 4 years of being a wide receiver 1, that's better than probably 70% of the starting receivers that have 3 to 5 year careers or even 7 to 8 year careers in the NFL. And he was worth the pick, and he is worth the hype. So I would say from that standpoint, the odds are likely he's going to be more successful than where I'm even talking, what I'm even talking about, just because of the fact that he's not a great press, he's not a great press route runner right now. But who wasn't either when he got started? Devontae Adams, and he's probably the best press man route runner in the league right now still.
I think it's interesting. One of the things Matt Harmon had said in the past that really stuck with me was that people will watch film of a receiver, especially a receiver prospect, and the moment they drop a ball, they will write down their notebook dropper. And it's like that, like things like that of like the way our minds just attach to like just a negative thing. And we're all three of us are involved in the scouting world a little bit. And I think one of the things to remember, and really a key tenet of the scouting world, is what can a player do? What can a player do? Like what can they do well? What can they contribute? How can they build off of that? Unless like what's broken here. And I think that it is something that we in the fantasy football world can maybe a little bit of tendency to think that we're playing general manager instead of like we're trying to figure out fantasy situations and fantasy points, and getting lost sometimes in we don't think this guy is good, but it doesn't matter sometimes if the offense is able to scheme him up and the offense is willing to go to him and he's going to be putting up numbers. So
fans generate a reputation too, and podcasts people who are host podcasts and have guests oftentimes do this, and it's unintentional. But what happens is you talk about a player and you're critical about them and go, oh, you hate this player. As opposed to, no, I'm explaining like Marvin Harrison, like we talked about Marvin Harrison 2 years ago. I didn't hate Marvin Harrison. I just thought he dropped the ball in certain situations that were going to be problematic for him at certain times, or Quentin Johnston at certain times. And they misused Quentin Johnston to begin his career. Marvin Harrison, they stuck him in situations where he had to do the things that he wasn't comfortable doing. But he had flashes of when they had him do something that he was comfortable with. He was fantastic. And I think that's the thing is like you brought up the point about, oh, he's a dropper. If you're going to actually try and scout this stuff, it's advisable for people who are listening. If you're going to do this, write down in your little notebook why he dropped the ball, when he dropped the ball, what was the situation when he dropped the ball, and remind yourself he dropped one ball. Let's see if he keeps dropping the ball in those situations and doing the same things that are causing a problem. Then if you see 3 or 4 or 5 of those, if you see them in the same game, if you see them spread out over 5 to 8 games where every time that situation comes up, he drops the ball, then you have something to write down and like put in your scouting report. Otherwise, it was a drop. Terrell Owens had a ton of them. Brandon Marshall had a ton of them. Most receivers in this league, even good ones, have drops, and they often have problems with their attack technically and do things that they can't, that they occasionally have problems with. I think I was watching Jamar Chase, who I think is the most talented receiver in the league. And he used an attack that I was like, yeah, that's not a good attack, even though I know he can do that very well, So meanwhile, the guy with the best attack in the league might be DeAndre Hopkins, and he's a part-time player right now.
100%. I like trying to figure out, like Jeff, you made a great comment saying, figure out what a guy can do. And we're talking about trying to take notes on these guys and figure out how you can sift through all of this noise. The way that I organize it, I like to go and I say, this is what they can do. This is what I haven't seen. And then these are positive trends, negative trends. And then I'll put a little star on the side. It's like, this is their superpower. Like Malik Neighbors, the way that he accelerates, that's a superpower. You're not finding that somewhere else. That's how he can separate at will. And then you talk about, DeAndre Hopkins at the catch point, the way that he can position his body, like that is a superpower. And then figuring out how is that going to translate to their role in the NFL. Like Cam Scatterbo fell to day 3. His superpower is that he runs every single run, like his life and his family's life depends on it. And he's like Juggernaut from X-Men, just charging and charging and charging. And that might run him into some problems, but it's earned him a role and it's won him the locker room, and it's why he's getting so many touches.
Yeah,
we do have a developing situation here. We have the Giants are winning 27-17 right now, winning by 2 scores, getting into, we still have plenty of time in this game, but we are approaching the 4th quarter here. But that's, I think Scott's got a question in here that might be a good jumping off point of a topic that we wanted to talk about. Scott's looking forward and Scott's planning out his team. And so he's got this question. Good evening, guys. 16-team league, full PPR, looking ahead to week 7. Dalton Kincaid on bye. What do you guys like as a streaming option? Dalton Schultz, Cade Otton, any New Orleans or Chicago tight end, Jatavian Sanders? Thanks. And I don't know if Sanders is going to be back for that game or not. And I think when you're looking at streaming tight ends, you do want to look at matchups. And I know for me, I do compartmentalize and I look at like this week is the only thing that exists right now. But I think it's good planning and looking ahead that your key guy is going to be on a bye. Do you guys have a gut feel on Schultz, Otton, or any of these other plays?
I mean, just right off the top of the head, I'm saying any New Orleans tight end. And I mean, Juwan Johnson was just such a big part of the offense for the first couple of weeks. Taysom Hill coming back muddies things up. I don't know what New Orleans is looking at in week 7, but if Johnson is active, involved in the offense, I'm a big fan of Johnson.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. If you're going to go, if you just want to go for the moon and you're going to try and go higher upside than that, and I don't think there's much higher upside than Juwan Johnson, you might decide to go a little crazy and see if Colston Loveland, when he gets back, starts to go on a tear. But the problem with that is it's a loaded offense, so there's gonna be a lot of shared targets, and it's not like they got him unbelievably involved before he got hurt. He just had flashes, so you can probably wait on Colston Loveland, and he might still be around if you try out Juwan Johnson and for some reason it doesn't work out. But yeah, I'm with you on Johnson.
All right, now we live in the world that we are able to see who they are playing in week 7. So maybe that changes your conversation a little bit because the Saints play the Bears in week 7. Houston has Seattle in week 7. Tampa has Detroit on a Monday night game at Detroit. And so that might be, I mean, if you're looking for a point explosion on a Monday night game, we did see Cade Otton was really not effective and utilized at all the first 4 weeks. And he got going against Seattle a little bit last week. And so, if you're really looking for a shootout potential there, maybe the Cade Otton in that Lions matchup might be the direction.
Sure. I mean, all 3 are quality players, really. So, and it's just a matter of who you think's going to get the most opportunities, in terms of target volume. So, but that, foreshadowing, leading a little bit, but planning, looking ahead. And Matt, before the show, you had a good topic that I think is worth diving into because I think both of you are very sharp dynasty players. Matt, you wanted to talk about, I know on your show that you do, the very good show that you do with Adam Harstad that gets released on Thursdays, you're talking about rebuilding a dynasty squad. And you want to explore that topic? I would. I mean, I would love to hear from you guys. Just, Adam laid out some advice on his end that, you can tune into the show, and Adam's a great dynasty player for sure. Talking about, how he approaches teardowns and rebuilds. He likes to give himself a 2-year window. I'll just give some highlights as he likes to give himself a 2-year window. He he has certain players that he and I both agree with, that quarterbacks and tight ends are generally players you can anchor around, that if you're going to tear down and you have a mid-level or mid-career quarterback or tight end, you don't want to get rid of them if they're good. But and then talking about rookie picks and accumulating rookie picks, as well as first year, rookie players. Now he even delves into that more because it's harder to get rookie picks now, delving into rookies who haven't produced yet but have a strong reputation, and loading up on some of those as well for the potential for them to break out. So those were some of the highlights there that I thought were pretty good. How about you guys? I mean, what are some things, do's and don'ts on your end, things you've tried that you found successful, things that you might say, I wouldn't try doing this, anything along those lines?
Yeah, I like the idea of the 2-year window, but the way that I look at it is I look at, why am I rebuilding? Am I rebuilding because I just lost Malik Neighbors and then I was using James Conner as my only RB2 and I don't have the depth right now? Or am I rebuilding because my team is just awful and underperforming and I took a lot of high upside swings that didn't pan out? And then figure out what the timeline will be to make that work. I think 3 years is as far as I would go, and that's like an absolute, this team is awful, I need to tear it down to the studs. But sometimes it can just be a 1-year thing, and then you figure out, okay, this is my timeline. What players do not fit into this timeline? So I like quarterbacks and tight ends mid-career. Like Dak Prescott is going to continue to be good for a while, even though he's over 30. Like, you don't need to sell him.
Adam thought about the same exact player.
Fantastic. That's a big win for me. But yeah, so you think about those players and you think about what are the age cliffs, the cutoffs, how do those kind of curves go? And as you find players that are not going to fit into that timeline, I prefer to sell in season, because if you try to sell Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, guys like that in May, you're probably not getting a lot. But then let's say you fast forward 2 weeks, Derrick Henry scores 100 touchdowns and looks like himself again. Now you might be able to go get a playoff first. Maybe you can go get a couple of early seconds, find the peak of those players and sell them at that point. Don't just sell to sell. But that's probably the succinct version of what I would say.
Yeah, well, that's great.
I think the two biggest mistakes that I see people make in a rebuild is first on the tearing down too much. And I think that I've seen people just decimate their team and like go for all draft picks and everything. And draft picks are awesome. They're great. And like Adam always makes a good point. Draft picks don't really lose value. You got to pick the right players on those draft picks. And I think that you can get the number 1 pick in the draft with a lot more talent on your team than I think a lot of people realize. It's just that, you pare it down to, I always think of cores. Like I think a lot in cores, think a lot in like top 50 players. And when I've successfully done rebuilds, I will have my core like 3 or 4 top 50 players on this team that I'm just not going to trade as part of that rebuild. I don't care about the picks that I might get out of that. Like I'm going to keep these pieces, and then I'm going to, like Adam says, on a 2-year window, dip down and grab a Bijan Robinson, grab a Caleb Williams that hits, or Jaden Daniels or something like that, and utilize that. And I think the other thing that the biggest mistake that I see in Dynasty is thinking that you need too many good pieces before you're actually contending. And I think that I've done polls before, and I'll kind of ask, like, how many like top 50, how many top 60 players do you think that you need before you exit a rebuild? And like the answers, people will say like 7 or 8 players. And I'm like, guys, like you're in a 12-team league. Like all these teams should only have 4 or 5 of these guys. The idea that you need 8 of these guys before you're out of a rebuild is absolutely ludicrous. And I think it's what I like to do when I'm in a rebuild situation. It's really just aggressively trimming those edges and trying to churn all the rest of the other pieces of, like, if a guy is not in my top 50, he's not like he's hurt right now, but like Malik Neighbors type example, or like a Ashton Genty or something like that. If I don't think they're going to be good and elite level player in 3 or 4 years, then they shouldn't really be on my roster. But also, I wouldn't consider them to be in that top 50 core of mine. But continuing to churn and continuing to try to pick up value of like maybe you've got a Michael Carter that you want on waivers and like get anything for Michael Carter right now or things like that to just keep rolling and snowballing and getting swings, because you can hit on second and third round picks, and hitting on those second and third round picks, you don't have to tank everything for a top 5 rookie pick from somebody else. You hit on those second and third rounders and you can get a loaded deep team very, very quickly, while also having your main core, while also adding 2 or 3 high value rookies onto that core.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great points. And I mean, for me, if you're going to tag off of what your point is, Jeff, is that if you decide that you're just going to trim the fat a little bit from your roster, maybe you find that what you're trimming is one position group.
Yeah.
And you look at that and go, maybe what I should do is just kind of go crazy right now at that position, because like I told that to Adam, but I didn't really give it a great context. And he was like, well, in theory, mathematically, that's correct. But in practicality, it's probably harder to stockpile like that and hit and not have the rest of your team suffer and be too lopsided. But, I had a rebuild with a team where I had the first overall pick. And leading up to that was a Devi Dynasty League, and it has special rules. But I had a 35-man roster, and I had 17 running backs on it. And I did that on purpose because I figured if I could hit on at least 2 or 3 of them, and I only can start 1 or 2. If I hit on really 3 or 4, I might have some value to trade, especially as there are other guys coming in from the Devi aspect that I added to it that are just sitting and waiting. So, this year, I have Tyjae Spears who got hurt, and he was a player that I was hoping to count on, but on some level. But I have Corey Krosky, Merritt, Cam Scatterbo, and Quinshon Duncan, and I can only start 2 of them.
It'll work.
So it took a year, and here we go, And meanwhile, I still have a couple of years left on guys like Marvin Harrison and Ricky Pearsall, and I'm going to be able to. And I'm good at quarterback, so now it's time to kind of get squared away with other positions. I'm going to be able to start trading within a couple of weeks, probably, to add more, to add quality players elsewhere. And now I can target who I want and negotiate that way, as opposed to, well, I'm just dependent on who falls to me in the draft. It's not that simple, but you get the alternative of what that could be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the talk I had with Adam in Vegas at our staff retreat, and just kind of talking about Dynasty in general. And I know, like, something Adam said really resonated with me, because we were talking about how many leagues we're in, and Adam really cut back how many leagues he's in. I'm in too many leagues right now, and I know that, and I need to figure that out. But he said, and I think that we probably play Dynasty in a very similar way. Of the way that I think to really truly play Dynasty is to try to work just every single edge you could possibly find, and try to reap value out of every single situation you can. Be that guy that is offering the most trade offers in the league, trying to just continue to churn pieces, because that's the best Dynasty players that I have seen will play that way. And then it will get to the draft and they have 4 first-round picks, 8 second-round picks, and they'll trade 2 of those first-round picks for 2 more first-round picks in the future, and end up just with this juggernaut snowball that they can just roll up. And once you get to year 4 or 5 of building that way, you can't play that way when you're in 10 to 15 leagues. If you have any semblance of an outside life at all, so it's really, really difficult to do that. And so I think that that's one of the things of, I feel like it's when you get down the Dynasty rabbit hole and you're doing all that and you're joining all these leagues and you're kind of like doing that, you're thinking you're making yourself better at Dynasty, but I think probably, arguably, you're making yourself a worse Dynasty player.
So if there's anything else, I mean, Mike, was there something you wanted to share with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in way too many leagues too. And the issue is that it's so much fun to draft and it's so much fun to move around the board and start picking up future picks. And then you actually have to manage your team where you try to do a 1-year punt and now you're starting, Demario Douglas as your wide receiver too. But I liked earlier, just to circle back on this, you talked about having 17 running backs. If there's a position for guys that are trying to rebuild to just stock up on, it's backup running backs and backup quarterbacks in super flex leagues, because we see it year in and year out. Starter goes down, contender needs somebody, and now you can sell. Like Jake Browning was going for a second when Joe Burrow went down, and Jake Browning gets replaced, and hopefully you cashed in. So you can reap a lot of value with those backup positions. Wide receiver, once you get past the top, like 19 to 20 guys, there's just from wide receiver 21 down to wide receiver 60. Any guy can go off on any given week. It's matchup dependent. It's skill position dependent. It's trying to figure out how to play those matchups the right way. So getting cornerstones at wide receiver, getting cornerstones at tight end, and then running back and quarterback, load up on a bunch of guys, figure out who hits, or if you're not ready for them to hit, sell them when they do.
Yeah, those are great points. So how about we end this on a note where, just out of curiosity, at this stage, we're a month and we're 6 weeks in now, so about to be 6 weeks in. Who's somebody that names each of you name somebody that you has exceeded your expectations, and you had high expectations in terms of what they've done, and then name somebody who has fallen below your expectations.
Is this for just the rookie class or everybody?
Everybody. Anybody.
I'll definitely start with a player that's fallen below my expectations. I was very, very high on Jameson Williams going into this year, and I looked at it as I still think he's an elite level talent. I thought John Morton coming in would bring maybe a little bit of a fresh perspective, and I think that there were times last year with Ben Johnson where it looked like they were really intentionally trying to make Jameson Williams the number one receiver at moments, and so I was very aggressive on Jameson Williams this offseason. I loved the value that he was sitting at in redraft leagues, and man, it just doesn't feel like it's there at all, like right now. And it was there was Dan Campbell had some comments about coming out of week 4 about how they have to get Jameson Williams involved, and I think the Lions are one of those. It's really interesting what they did last week, because I don't know how much I want to buy into it, because it was the Bengals, and so they're probably walking in expecting to blow them out, but they really shifted heavily towards a 2 tight end offense. They benched Khalif Raymond. They made Isaac Tisla their wide receiver 3. They played a ton of Brock Wright, and from the start, they were really intentional with targets to Sam Laporta and like almost treating him like the slot receiver in that offense. And it's like one of those things of like, how much do I want to take away from this, knowing that matchup that they were going into? That did they want to go just 2 tight ends heavy, knowing that they're going to be able to rely on the running backs, or is this them kind of admitting that it's not coming together for Jameson Williams in a way that they would like, and they need to start looking at other things to figure out solutions?
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
I really loved Travion Henderson coming out. I thought like the pass blocking at Ohio State was above average for his size. I thought a lot of the tenacity there was good, and I thought the explosiveness would translate really well in a team that needed pass catching options. I knew Ramondre Stevenson was going to get his work on first and second down, so I had kind of tempered expectations there, but I did not expect Antonio Gibson to be running in front of him and for him to require an Antonio Gibson injury to then be the number 2 back, to then hopefully maybe eventually begin getting touches if Ramondre Stevenson fumbles 100 more times. So it's just one of those things in an offense that needs playmakers, explosiveness, speed, a way to stress the defense on the perimeter. They have that in the backfield, and Henderson just has not translated in the same way that I expected him to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been Bryce Young. I thought Bryce Young would be a borderline number 1 quarterback after what I saw him do down the stretch last year, especially the way he read defenses, the poise that he displayed, the fact that he was getting it done with David Moore and Jalen Coker. I mean, he made David Moore look like a full-fledged like versatile receiver that we've only seen him be like a deep threat. He might as well have. David Moore was like a plus version of like Derek Young, in Seattle. I mean, like that was basically the role he had. And to see him winning dig routes the way that he was and playing as well as he did, I was like, okay, this kid's for real. Like this kid, and I still think he can be good. And maybe it's that the Carolina Panthers are force feeding him Xavier Legette, who is sometimes shows something really good, when it's a full moon. And then sometimes he's dropping a lot of passes and doesn't seem like he's a full-fledged guy yet. And they don't have Coker back, and Sanders has been hurt. The line hasn't been great. But it's like the Miami game, he was literally Jekyll and Hyde. And like Hyde showed up. Well, Jekyll showed up first for Miami's defense. And they were like, "Yeah, you're a gentleman. We're gonna steamroll you guys." And then the animal came out after that, and really they started to play with some cojones. Like at the end of the game, some of the throws that he hit, you're like, "That's the Bryce Young that I was expecting. That he could make good with guys who really you wouldn't expect to be, strong fantasy plays or even strong starters." And I was thinking if he could make do with that. Wait till next year, we're going to get him into the low end of quarterback one territory. The guy that exceeded expectations thus far for me, and I want to hear you guys after that, Mikey and then Jeff. I'm going to say Ashton Ginty. He's exceeded my expectations because I didn't think he was going to be a running back one this year. I was thinking, this is way back, but I'm thinking first year Jonathan Taylor for much of the year where people are like, oh, it's Trent Richardson part 2, or LaDainian Tomlinson for those of you who remember those days way back when he was averaging 3.7, 3.8 yards per carry and looked good doing it. But it was like, still people didn't look at the box score and weren't happy. And from what I've seen of Ashton Ginty, I'm no Ryan Clark, but I would say that I think he has it. I think he's done a very good job after contact. He's done a great job of finding whatever creases they had or making do with whatever's there and just getting what he can get, even if that's a small loss. And so now that they've gotten some of their blocking figured out by making some changes, he's, and I know it's the Bears and the Bears played nickel and they were, in the last game and, he ran through that and the matchups were good. I still think he could average 2.9 yards per carry or 1.9 yards per carry this year. If he's doing the things that I've seen him do on tape right now, I would take him in a heartbeat. And if somebody's frustrated and wants to give him up, I would pay for that.
Yeah. The play that he fumbled on, the unblocked nose guard that was coming through, is the strongest player in the NFL that people have measured.
Billings. Yeah.
And Ashton Ginty shrugged him off like it was me. So That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Somebody that has exceeded expectations for me, I think I was Tucker Kraft's strongest soldier. Like what he can do after the catch, what he does with the ball in his hands. That was just a big indication that the Packers need to get him the ball a little more often. And he's taken that jump. He's shown that he is an instrumental part of their offense. I think if he continues to earn targets in the way that he is, we're talking about him as a top 2, top 3 dynasty tight end, because it's his show in Green Bay and they'll rotate receivers, but Tucker Kraft will stay.
Nice.
2 guys. One guy, quick one. I think it's, a cautionary tale on preseason reports, because I don't think the preseason reports are wrong. Stephon Diggs, there was a big fade on him, right at the end, because it was all the reporting was he's a part-time player and all these things. And it's not wrong. He was a part-time player. It's just that he gets the target every single time he's on the field and he goes for 100 yards. So I think it's, that's just an interesting thing there, because it's one of those that.
I ate it on that one this year.
Yeah.
I listened to Tom Curran and was like, okay, they're bought into Boutte. They're bought into, Diggs didn't look great in Houston. And I sold Diggs to begin the year. I mean, I got a net second round pick out of it, so I'm not exactly too embarrassed by it all. I ended up with Butte, which doesn't exactly help me, but right now, but the pick I can live with, and all I got rid of in addition to him was Tank Bigsby, and I'm not too worried about. We see what happened to Tank. That was before he got traded too.
That's tough.
So it's still I wound up getting a second round pick in Butte, and he got Tank Bigsby and Diggs. I mean, it both helps us for where we're going to go. Though I wouldn't have minded having Diggs this year because completely off base with that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's one of those that when I sat down to do my projections for the Patriots in the early offseason, I was like, how are you not forcing a ton of volume to Stephon Diggs when you break down this offense? Like, this is like he's being valued as like wide receiver 40. Like, how is this guy not like top 20 wide receiver when you look at this offense? And then I flash back too of like the Chiefs a handful of years ago. The beat was Sky Moore is everywhere. Sky Moore is just he was all over the field. He just never was touching the ball. Like, it was like, so I think it's interesting some of the times on some of those things. But my guy that I was high on that has exceeded my expectations, Rome Odunze, is a guy that I was really high on that has even exceeded those expectations. And I think it's just a lot of things and Caleb Williams is an offshoot of that. I was very, very high on Caleb Williams. I think I might have ended up as one of the highest rankers on Caleb Williams, and he's been excellent in terms of fantasy football. And it's really just, I mean, Caleb Williams is just a study in narratives, like when you break it down, and it's really interesting. But neither here nor there as two parts together. You're seeing those two players really take off and grow together. And Ben Johnson, being an excellent offensive head coach, is going to utilize his best personnel. And it probably didn't take it very long to say this Rome Odunze guy went like 8th in the draft for a reason. He is an elite level playmaker. We are going to make sure that we are getting him the ball at every opportunity that we can. And they have done that so far. It's been really rewarding to just see the growth and see that Bears offense and that franchise just click in the way that it has. And I don't want to get over the skis here, but they were a really fun matchup. And I'm going to write about kind of the inflection point of when you look at the Commanders season last year and the Bears season last year, and it came down to that Hail Mary and how they just departed entirely after that play. Like, I think the Bears were 4-2 going into that game. The Commanders are 5-2, and they have that Hail Mary. And, if the Bears, the play doesn't happen, the Bears win that game. They're 5-2, the Commanders drop. And I think it's interesting to just see the way that things can dovetail.
And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to Caleb Williams, to be honest with you. Because if they still had that coaching staff, he might be what the naysayers said he was, just by nature of being tortured by a team that didn't know how to develop.
Yeah. I want to probably end just a dose of perspective. So I'm going to give you 3 guys here, and I want you guys to kind of guess where they were through week 5 last year. And the names are going to be Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, and Josh Jacobs. Where do you think that they were in running back scoring through week 5 last year?
I think they were all outside the top 24, right?
Devon Achane was 19, Bijan Robinson was 21, Josh Jacobs was 23. And then from week 6 on, Bijan running back 2, Josh Jacobs running back 5, Devon Achane running back 6. So while we feel like it's halfway through the season, oh my gosh, the league winners and all that is still out there. And I mean, you look at the top 10 from week 6, those guys were off the radar through the first 5 weeks. And I think that that's one of the things is as we talk about continuing to grow, continuing to build your teams, looking at some of these situations, just like we started off the show, of players that might fade out of the valuation that they have currently, or players that can take off and that are being underrated right now. And that was a great roundtable you put together, Matt.
Well, thank you. And you guys do a fantastic job of, answering the questions and providing the insights that you do. And the best thing that I learned is that I have a team name that I want to use now. Sky Moore is everywhere.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us this week. And let's do the classic thing of, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Matt. It's always awesome to talk to you. Jeff, I'm sure I'm going to text you way too much about rookies for the next 5 years. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X at FF Mike Cash, and that's with a K. I write at Football Guys, and got a new feature coming out here pretty soon. So be sure to check the site pretty frequently.
Nice.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the end of this Giants-Eagles game. The Giants look like they are in good position. So take care, everybody. Good luck week 6.
Let's go Dart.